preservation is so important here on the Outer Banks. Many of the Coast Guard communities that began to occur on the Outer Banks are the roots of our communities to this very day. The Wright brothers, for example, stayed in the Kill Devil Hills Life Saving Station, which is another preservation project by North Carolina. Many of our communities in Hatteras, Kill Devil Hills, Kitty Hawk, Corolla, and Washwoods literally began around the families that worked those stations. Twitty & Company has always believed that the preservation efforts, not only of Twitty & Company, but of the entire Outer Banks, serve to connect us to our heritage and serve to tell the stories of how we came to live in this wonderfully historic and fragile and unique place that so many of us call home. Coast Guard comes into being in 1915 to help with several areas of the threat from World War I and the fear of German raiding. Also, the age of sail is dying down, and more manned and powered boats are working their way up the Outer Banks and across the eastern seaboard of the United States. And these life-saving stations came to be to save lives of folks who were shipwrecked here in the graveyard of the Atlantic. So in 1986, my mother and father were approached. My father had approached the property owner of the Kill Devil Hills Station, where the Wright brothers actually stayed and where the crew who helped the Wright brothers fly and took the most famous and iconic photograph of the 20th century, where they actually lived. The owners of that, were going to move it or otherwise tear down the structure to make room for progress. History is, if there's one rule of history, it's change. My father said, "Will you please let me have it?" So my mother and father cut it into 4 pieces with the help of a lot of people and literally put it on a 2-lane highway, and they took down some power lines and brought it up to Corolla and reassembled it in Corolla. And in doing so, discovered an old telegraph wire and some old articles that were way up in the attic of the station, the original sign. So a lot of folks say, why is the Kill Devil Hills Station in Corolla? And that's why in Corolla we had the land. Land was cheaper, and it was easier to preserve buildings in Corolla than it was in Kill Devil Hills. But it is the original station, built in 1878, and the Wright brothers are well-documented residents of that station for many years as they conducted some of their flight experiments. So we think by preserving the past, we also preserve our own heritage and preserve our identity as a community, and we hope that in years to come, those stories are not forgotten and in fact become part of who we are, and those stories become the fabric of our lives, not just personally, but our professional lives and what we are as a company. So we don't do it for the credit, we do it because of the importance of preservation in North Carolina. We like to think that we buy time and we preserve properties so that stories can be told long after we're gone of the brave men and women who created so much of the Outer Banks. And we've done things like the Kill Devil Hills Station that is now here in Corolla. The Corolla Village, the schoolhouse, celebrates 100 years. Was the first charter school in northeastern North Carolina and is now home to almost 30 children. It brings families back to Corolla. The Washwood Station is the only commercial structure up on the 4-wheel drive beaches. It's commercial because we use it as a real estate office, but it's the Washwoods Coast Guard Station that is the real estate office, not the other way around. My mom and dad worked very hard to restore the station. There is the main station, there's the kitchen behind the station. There's also the recently restored life-saving tower and the recently restored boathouse that sits out by the ocean. Each of those restorations are actually historically accurate rehabilitations or reconstructions of the drawings as they occurred in the National Archives. And this year, 2017, marks the 100th anniversary of the creation of that station.
We have all the original plans. I've found everything in the National Archives, and tower, the boathouse, the cook kitchen, the main station, the flag tower, the stable, everything. Started with a few little projects. I did reproduced the doors on the boathouse from the original plans, and then the cisterns were next, and then the tower. We believe the only one in existence. It's replicated from the original plans, but there were, I believe, 3 or 4 towers of this type that were built in the United States, and this is the only one that's ever been replicated. The house itself and the roof, I built, made every cut. Nothing on that is off the shelf. Everything is replicated from rough wood. You know, old work is, you can't go buy it anywhere. Everything's pretty much custom done. Every little piece, something rots, something's missing, you have to make that. There's a lot involved in it. It's not definitely not a quick process, but it's lasted this long. It takes a bit to put it back, but hopefully it'll last another 100.
We love the Coast Guard. The lives they've saved here in the graveyard of the Atlantic is one of North Carolina's treasures. And the Coast Guard has been remarkable guardians and historians of a great heritage. And we'd be remiss, as we celebrate 100 years in this building, to not celebrate in conjunction with that the United States Coast Guard and the men and women of the United States Coast Guard who go out to this very day, just like they did in 1917, and save lives. They go out, they're not guaranteed to come back in. So in a lot of ways, the story of Wash Woods and the Coast Guard is a story of bravery and commitment and service, and I think that's absolutely remarkable. And if for no other reason, that's why we should celebrate Wash Woods. We love the Coast Guard.